This isn't the video that I wanted to make. I just was so disappointed with how everything was looking. But all is not lost, and I've got a few ideas for how to bring this piece back to life. So stick around and wish me luck. I don't think anyone would struggle to believe that this little side table was made from the cheapest wood I could find in the DIY shop. But what if I told you this side table is also made from wood from the DIY shop? And what if I told you all you need to build it is a handsaw, a drill, and a bit of sandpaper? Well, let me show you. Hey, it's Peter here from Northernworks. Now, this all started when I was looking for hardwood in my local DIY shop, and the only thing I could find was this strip wood, which got me thinking, can I make a really nice piece of furniture using just this and a few hand tools? Now, lucky you already knows the answer to this question because you've seen it in the thumbnail and the intro, but I'm genuinely interested in this challenge to see how I'm going to use such simple tools to make something that's still fine furniture with hopefully fine joinery. And the first thing I need to do is joint this thicker board into a panel. For this project, I'm trying to make everything as accessible as possible to totally new beginners who want to make a really nice piece of furniture, which is why I've chosen this oak in particular from DIY shop. It's planed all round, so you don't need any specialist equipment to get started using it. But you do still need to take a little bit of care on grain selection. Let me show you what I mean. Because this panel is going to be a tabletop, I want to make sure that when it's finished, it's actually as smooth and as regular as possible. And this one has got a lot of irregularities in the grain, and it's also got this knot here. So when I'm cutting this down into smaller boards, I want to remove the piece that's got the knot in, which should mean I've got better boards to play with when I come to put it all together. And taking a little bit of extra care now will give me a better result at the end. Now, when you're marking square lines across a board, something like a combination square is going to be really accurate, but actually most saws like this have got a 90 degree and a 45 degree set square already built into the handle, so you can just use that. Right, now those boards are cut to length, I can start to think about how the actual panel is going to look when it's finished. So I'm moving the boards around to sort of see what goes where, what's going to look good in the middle of the table. You know, the bits at the end are going to sort of be cut off because this is going to be turned into a round tabletop. So I'm looking for how the grain matches, if it's straight grain to straight grain, if there's swirls in the middle, can I make a nice pattern? I quite like this. And then once I'm happy with it, I can mark it with a carpenter's triangle, which will help me to match it all back up when I come to glue it up. Now, speaking of the glue up, now despite being planed all around wood, even from the factory, these edges aren't entirely straight, which means I've got a few gaps in between the boards that I don't want to glue into place forever. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to do to try and get this panel as flat as possible. The first thing I'm going to do is mark these edges into their pairs, and then I'm going to plane the faces together so that even though they might not be perfect, when they're matched together, they should have a closer gap. Now, a hand plane is perfect for this job. You can just put the boards together and plane them together. But if you don't have a plane and you're not intending to get one, then a bit of wood, make sure it's flat, wrapped in sandpaper, and we should still get a good quality edge. You see how this corner is just slightly higher than the rest, so I just need to spend a little bit more time on it. And it's not perfect, but I think that's about as good as I'm going to get that, so time to start gluing up. And to make sure it stays as flat as possible when I'm gluing it up, I'm going to put some dowels in the edges using a homemade doweling jig. Right, while that panel's drying up, it's time to get started on these legs. And because I'm using just a set of simple tools for this project, I wanted to keep the joinery on the legs pretty simple too. But I still want it to be a piece of nice furniture, so the joinery needs to be strong and look good as well. So I've designed the legs using a technique where I put multiple pieces of wood together, laminate them, to make everything with halving joints or half laps, without needing to use chisels or any other fancy tools. And by the way, I'm making plans for this coffee table available on my shop, northernworks.co. So if you're interested in those, make sure you go and sign up. Link in the description. And for now, I'm just going to rough cut these to around about the right length, and then I'll clean everything up later. Right, I want to make these joints as clean as possible off the saw, so I'm going to try a trick using another block of wood at a nice 90-degree angle, clamped onto my cut line as a saw guide, and I think that's going to just help keep things a little bit crispy. Just a touch of sanding to clean that up, but that's pretty sharp. Happy with that. Now that these triangles are cut, it's a little bit easier to see how this is all going to work when I put all of the pieces together. And essentially it all works because things are going to get glued together, which means rather than having to cut tenons, I can just cut a receiving gap into this piece and it'll all fit together like a normal halving joint. But the problem that I found is these triangles are just not quite long enough, which means there's not enough gluing surface to make the whole halving joint really, really strong. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've trimmed these triangles so there's much more overlap. So even though these angles are more acute, it means I've got a lot more surface area for gluing, which means a stronger joint, which is good for a table. So all I need to do now is cut the receiving gaps into the other pieces, and then we can glue everything up and crack on. So some of you might be thinking at this point, why am I cutting triangles for the joinery and not, square sockets? It's a lot easier to cut a triangle with a handsaw than it is to try and cut out a square socket, at least with a cheap, simple DIY handsaw. And the whole point of that is that I want this project to be as accessible as possible to anyone. That saw cost £8 from B&Q. Anyone can have a crack at this. Well, it's definitely not going to be a quick job. Well, that's used all 5 of my clamps at the same time, but that just means I'll have to do them one at a time. So give me a few minutes and I'll get these all done. All right, let's get this side table finished. I've actually had about a month off from this project in the end, and some of that was because I was away climbing, and some of it, of course, was because of work and other projects. But to be honest, there's another reason I've been away so long as well. This isn't the video that I wanted to make. I wanted to make a video using simple tools and wood from a DIY shop and show that it's pretty simple to make really fine furniture for your home. But when I've come to take the clamps off after my holiday, I just was so disappointed with how everything was looking. I've got massive gaps in the legs, and this panel that I put all that time in to put the dowels in to keep it flat isn't flat. I think the edge on one of the boards just wasn't as straight as I thought it would be, and I've glued it up with a bend in it. I guess making fine furniture just isn't as simple as I hoped it would be, but then it wouldn't be as much fun if it was. But all is not lost, and I've got a few ideas for how to bring this piece back to life. So stick around and wish me luck. Right, let's start with this panel. And the first thing I need to do is to take this rough, pretty much square thing and turn it into a circle. Now you don't need a big expensive jig to turn something square into something round. I'm just going to use a panel pin and some old string and use that to draw my circle. Then I can use the handsaw to cut close to the line, probably finish it off with sandpaper. I need a break from that tabletop, so I've made myself a brew. I'm going to spend some time cleaning up these legs. Well, I'm feeling a lot less grumpy than I was a couple of hours ago, and I reckon actually these will clean up pretty nice with some sanding. And for these gaps here, I'm just going to use the old put some glue in, sand over them, and hope that the sawdust fills them trick. They're a bit wide, but let's give it a go. See, I was being so dramatic earlier. Those are looking really nice now. Now, at the risk of this becoming a 20-minute video of me sanding, I am going to put a round over on the front of each of these legs before I move on to anything else. So let me do that and then we'll get back to putting everything together. All right, well, I got through quite a few podcast episodes, but this is definitely in a place that I'm happy with. I'll be totally honest with you, the thought of sanding right to the edge with just that sandpaper did make me a bit sad inside. So I popped out and I got myself a sanding disc to go in the drill. So it is technically still a project that's only used a saw, a drill, and some sandpaper, and it's worked so well that I'm going to use it again to sand the chamfer into the bottom edge of the tabletop. Nice. Let's get the legs on. So the idea with connecting the legs to the tabletop is I want the legs to sort of flow down off the edge of the table. I can't really describe it very well, so you just have to wait until you see it. But in order to do that, I need to cut another recess into the top of the legs. And then because the mating edge is flat, I actually want to sand a little flat spot onto the edge of the tabletop, and that means I should get a really nice connection. Oh yeah, that works. Nice. All right, feels like we're on the home straight now. Okay, I'm going to attach the tabletop to the legs using screws and dowels, but before I can do that I need to trim the excess on the underside of these legs so that they all match up in the middle, and to do that I'm going to draw just a couple of lines, one across there and then one across there, and that should mean that they just mate neatly together in the middle. It should also look quite nice. We'll see how it goes in reality. Well, they don't quite meet in the middle, but it does look pretty cool. Right, let's get dowels in these, and that should line them up. Yes, a little gap here, which is annoying. So I need to fix that, but this is the first time I've seen it all together, and it is better than I hoped it would be, to be honest. Right, now I can drill countersinks into the legs so that my screws can go halfway through. This is absolutely brilliant. This is way better than I imagined it would be. I need to fill in some gaps, get it finally sanded up, and I can get finish on it. Well, I really don't think I could be any happier with this little side table, especially considering I just made it with a few simple DIY tools and some wood from B&Q. And it just goes to show me, if you put the effort in, you really can get amazing results. Now, don't forget, I'm selling plans for this side table on my website, northernworks.co. So make sure you sign up for the mailing list to get notified when those are available. Hopefully that'll be really, really soon. And more than anything else, I hope that this video has inspired you to just try and build something cool. See you again.